Hey, everybody. Welcome back. It's been a little minute since I've had a chance to do a live interview. Thrilled that you're here, replay viewers. Thanks for sticking around. I've got a really interesting guest with me today. I don't often take a lot of pitches, but this one caught my eye. Without any further delay, let me introduce this week's guest. Today's guest is a beacon of resilience and reinvention, known in real estate and beyond. With over 2 decades of experience in the industry, she's not only achieved consistent six-figure incomes for herself, she's also guided thousands of agents to do the same, all while maintaining a balanced life. After facing financial despair with only $4 to her name, she rose from adversity to become a top producing realtor and acclaimed real estate coach. Her transformative journey, symbolized by her $4 story, has propelled her into her dream life and empowered countless individuals worldwide. As a speaker, author, and real estate agent and coach, her mission extends beyond the confines of the real estate realm. She passionately advocates empowering agents to thrive in their careers while embracing a healthy work-life balance. With her coaching style focused on relationship building, success habits, and boundary setting, she challenges conventional notions in the industry and champions a revolutionary approach to real estate success. Please join me in welcoming Jacki Semerau Tait. Welcome, Jacki.
Robbie, thank you so much for having me. I can't wait to have a chat with you today.
So, Jacki, you are joining us from your place in Flagstaff, Arizona. Thrilled to have you on the show. You know, it's a show about building strong networks, and the context is leadership. So, tell me, how do you define leadership, and when did you realize you had the skills to lead?
So, I would say that how I would define leadership is wrapped up in influence and responsibility. So, I think a lot of times people will have one or the other, and it's when you marry the two that you step into your leadership. And I think that anyone can be called to leadership. It doesn't matter how big or small the group of people that you have influence and responsibility over is. I think of parents. Parents are a great example of true leadership when they step into that role and really embrace it. So, and then you've got people in all different, all the way up to, big, huge political platforms and things like that, and the whole gamut in between. But I think when you marry the fact that you have influence over certain people and you take that responsibility very seriously, that's where leadership steps into play.
I love that I've been interviewing people for close to 8 years, and I haven't heard this succinct answer. Influence and responsibility. When you're thinking about leadership, you could kind of marry these two concepts together and you'll get a really good sense of what that leadership should be about. When did you first start to realize that you had influence and responsibility? When did that start to become part of your awareness?
So here, I'm going to answer that question by telling you the first time I realized someone else was a leader for me.
Okay.
And it was when I was when I was a little girl. I was in ballet and dance. My parents got me involved in ballet at 4 years old. And going through that, I became that was my trajectory in life. I thought I was going to be a professional ballerina, and then I wanted to be a choreographer. And my dream was to be a choreographer for Janet Jackson. I kid you not. So, hey, I had big dreams as a kid. And so I also had, you learn a strong work ethic. You learn that, talent will take you so far. Work ethic will take you exponentially farther. And there was a girl in our ballet studio, and she was 4 or 5 years older than I was, and everybody loved her. Her name was Amy. And to this day, I can still remember thinking, I want to be like Amy. She had a good sense of humor. She wasn't dramatic. She had the sense of how she would always help other people feel valued, which, she was a teenager. That's a really unique skill. I'm 4 or 5 years younger than her. I'm elementary, junior high. She's high school. And I just remember watching her going, I want to be like Amy. And I'm ashamed to say that as a young girl, I was not like Amy. I was very dramatic and wanted my own way. I was the baby of the family. So, but watching her and watching how people responded to her valuing them, I thought, oh, I get it. Others before self. And so by her example of leadership, I wanted to step into that and say, okay, I want to lead the way Amy leads. I want to make other people feel good about themselves. I want to lift other people up. And so Amy graduated and went on to college. And here I kind of came up now I'm the girl in high school with the influence over others. And I would say that's the first time I ever stepped into a leadership role and recognized the importance of it and what that meant.
I love this story because you witnessing someone else at a young age who themselves were fairly young, teenager, and in some ways, therefore, somebody you could really imagine yourself as. Like if they'd been a principal, you know, it's a little harder. You're like, well, they're an adult, you know, they're supposed to be these ways. But like to see someone that was not that far ahead of you act in ways that other people responded really positively to, that lit other people up. First of all, a rare thing for a teenager. I think it's a lot of self-awareness built into that. I hope that Amy ends up coming across this interview because that would just be so amazing.
I do too. And you know what's funny, Robbie, is I've never publicly told that story on any other podcast or anything. So I agree. I hope she sees it.
That'd be amazing. All right, we'll find a way. We'll work it through. So this is really cool that it gave you a good sense, a positive sense of how to show up for you to embody when you had the opportunity to be the lead, you know, the leader in that space.
Right.
When you were, you know, in high school and that, you know, started to get more involved in activities, did you seek out leadership opportunities in other spaces, clubs, activities, running for student office? Did teachers sort of call on you thinking like you had leadership potential, or, you know, did it cross over, I guess, from one sort of area of your life to the other?
It did not at that time. I was in a situation where my dad got transferred. We lived in the Chicago area. My dad got transferred to Phoenix. And so I started my sophomore year there. And I had a really hard time. I battled with depression. I had just some other health issues on top of everything. And it was really a tough time for me. So I really had to kind of, I don't know what people recognized in me other than I tried really hard to breathe every day, you know? And I think that there's a lot of people who have felt that or maybe are feeling that even right now. And I would say, you know, the thing I had inside of me that I would encourage anyone who's hearing this and struggling on a day-to-day basis is you have greatness inside of you. And I think I connected with that when I was in ballet and young. And when I was shaken up and moved out of that situation and really struggling, there was still that seed inside of me that knew it was in there somewhere. And even though on the day-to-day, I found it really hard to connect with that, I really do think that having that somewhere in my spirit, kind of my future self calling to me, if you will, helped me to hang on in the tough times.
I'm glad that that seed was planted before you had to be uprooted in that way, and again find a new way of feeling secure in an environment. It's a tough time. I mean, not that moving as a child would be ever easy, but that sounds like a really hard year to be trying to make those kinds of transitions as you're getting into high school and beyond. When you were, you know, 12 or so years old, did you have a sense of what you wanted to be when you grew up? Was there a plan? Was there a path laid out by your family or an expectation to go to college and then get a career? Like, was there some other profession or passion that you had?
No, when I was 12, well, I mean, yes, I had a vision of what I wanted to be, but I really did. I had excelled from a talent perspective and found, trust me, my parents taught me a very healthy work ethic, and I'm so grateful for that. So marrying that work ethic with the talent in dance, that was all I wanted my whole life. Like I said, I mean, I was 12 years old and I was already envisioning myself choreographing for Janet Jackson. I mean, I knew the outfits that she was going to wear and her dancers would. I mean, I had it down in my mind's eye, right? But so that was truly my expectation, and I let go of that a little bit when we moved to Arizona. And then when I graduated high school, I actually moved back to Chicago with the plan to audition for the Ruth Page Foundation, which is a dance forward, basically you go to the Ruth Page Foundation and from there you go to ABT or, American Ballet Theater or what have you. So that was the goal. But, got other plans. So it's all good. I will say, here's a lesson to learn is that in that time in my life, I showed up, right? I uprooted myself, went back to Chicago. I was ready to go. And then I never showed up for the audition. Every time I knew they were having open auditions, I had been practicing, I had been stretching, I had been doing all the things. And then I would have an excuse why I not yet. I'm going to go to the next one. And I think if I remember right, they had them every 5 weeks or every 8 weeks, whatever it was. But so every time it was like there was enough time that was going to pass that I felt like, oh, I'll be fine and I'll be ready then. But it wasn't such a long time that it was like, oh, come on, Jacki, now or never. But I always had an excuse as to why not to show up. And then we had some family stuff happen where I had a family member who had a health issue. I had to sublet my apartment and move in with her and help her. And I never went back. So it's my true one and only regret in life is that I didn't show up for the audition. Knowing what I know now, it would have been fine. I could have bombed the audition. I could have never, it would have been fine. But I do think that was a life lesson that I needed at the young age of, 20 years old. I needed that life lesson because ever since I will tell myself, you know what? We're not going to regret. We're going to show up. We're going to try. I may fall flat on my face, but I'm not going to look back and go, gosh, I wish I would have.
Honestly, that's a lesson that people twice that age might still be struggling to learn. So to learn it effectively at a 20-year-old age and be able to learn and like live differently because of that experience, that's wonderful in a way, but painful in the moment. Like really painful to even hear you talk about making the very brave decision to uproot your life again, go back to Chicago, get back to training, commit to the idea and then keep kind of putting off the future. And in some ways, I think people do that even later in life because they're afraid of the success possibility as much as the failure possibility. It's like change is just scary for people, but it sounds like you've committed to the act of doing and then living through the aftermath, the consequences of that. And that's a different muscle memory that you've built up. That's really interesting. What did you end up doing next then? Like, how did you get back on your feet? Once the dancing door kind of closed for you, you're still pretty young. What was the other thing that had caught your attention you decided to put energy into?
Well, when I actually moved back, so I helped my family member for a short period of time. And then by the time that season was over, it was November. And I don't know if any of y'all have ever been in Chicago in November. Is cold. So I thought, and again, my parents are living in Arizona. And so I was like, nope, that's it. Going back to Arizona. I don't need to deal with this winter. And so I moved back in with my parents. I got a job as a dance teacher. So I was teaching, students ballet, gymnastics, jazz, that kind of thing. And that's when I actually met my first husband. So my whole life went this direction. I ended up getting married and having my 2 beautiful, wonderful daughters. And through that period of time, I did actually go back to college, was going to pursue my major in dance and choreography. And then, of course, when I got pregnant with my first child, and again, you kind of do the thing where, okay, this is a temporary setback. I'll come back to this. I'll come back to this. And that was one of those things where I never came back to it the way I thought I would, even though it has served me later in life, my dance experiences. So, that's a whole nother story. But while I was in that season of life and I had a toddler and an infant, my ex-husband and I, we at the time wanted to get into real estate investing. So we started working with a realtor, and she just didn't really understand what we were trying to accomplish. I don't think she had really worked with a lot of investors. And we were young and we didn't really know what we were doing. So it was not a good match. And so at the time, I was a stay-at-home mom with the kids. And so I said, why don't I go to real estate school? I'll get my license and I'll represent our own interests. And the oddest thing happened. So now I am a creative. I have the creative brain. I don't have I am 100% that girl. But I fell in love with real estate. I fell in love with the legalities and the intricacies and all the moving pieces. And I think maybe it's the fact that you have to take all these pieces and put them together like the right puzzle in every transaction, and every transaction is different. And I think that's what I ended up falling in love with. So by the time I was licensed, I said, I think I really want to do this as a career. I don't think I want to just represent ourselves. I want to do this. And so that's what I stepped into full force. And then, through that period of time, ended up getting divorced, became a single mom and whatnot. But yeah, so that was where I went.
The story will go on from there, but let me just ask you about this period of your life. Because there's nothing really in your story up to this point that makes me think you want to become a real estate agent, right? Like it's just not the path that it seemed you were on, given the creativity, the dance, the arts that you were sort of really drawn to.
Yeah.
The fact that you thought the two of you were thinking about investing in real estate is also really interesting. Did you get that idea from other people? Did you know people who were doing it? Like, did you like win the lottery and thought, let's invest the money? Like, how do you, first of all, are you now in your 20s? Like, how old are you as you're starting to have this conversation about, let's get into real estate investing?
I was 26 when I got my real estate license. So we probably started talking about it when I was 25.
Yeah. You're mid 20s.
Yeah.
Most people don't have a plan of any kind. But you're talking about like really planning for the future, but thinking about real estate investment. Where does that idea come from?
It was a little bit of twofold, because we had, my dad was very into investing, and I watched, he was a blue collar guy, and I watched him handle the money well in an investment standpoint. And that stuck with me. Same with my grandparents. So his parents were blue collar, straight, Chicago, just amazing people. But they got involved with investing. And I watched how at the end of their life, how that actually sustained all of the things that they went through. Medically, my grandma had to move into an assisted living facility and, things like that. She had Alzheimer's at the end. So she, for a few years, was in an Alzheimer's ward with an assisted living. So, you just watch that happen and it kind of clicks in your head. And at that time, in my early 20s, I can tell you, I didn't understand stocks and bonds and all those things, but I did have a sense for real estate, simply because I'll tell you where the first place it came from was when we bought, my ex-husband and I bought our first home, and we did okay with it. And then we parlayed that into a home that we purchased that needed everything. It needed cosmetically, it needed new paint, new flooring, new all the things. And we did that. And we had so much fun with it. And so that was what we were thinking is, so now we're kind of maybe a year and a half into owning that house, and we're looking around and everybody's going, oh, your home is so beautiful and you did such a great job with this, that, and the other. And so we thought, could we do that again? Could we do that again and make money? And so I think it was a marriage of watching the importance of thinking about your future and having some fun fixing up our house that we lived in. So that was our goal.
House flipping is a real thing. And I remember Carlton Sheets. Was that a name from the past?
That's a name from
the 90s. Okay, so Carlton Sheets was always on my TV telling me about how I can invest in real estate. no money down. I bought the Tate set. I, you know,
I love
I was in high school and maybe the beginning of college, and I was like really into this idea. Did not pursue it. But yeah, like I think that there was a lot of buzz kind of going on about this idea. Enough so that I was hearing about it, and I was not, you know, it was not the talk of the town in my adults for per se. But
it.
yeah, you know, and I guess it's a more tangible concept than stocks and bonds. Really, like you get
Yeah.
it. Like, it's real estate, like literally. That's the whole point, right? It's not like imaginary money; it's a real thing. So if you know how to do all that, by the way, was my flaw. I did not know how to fix a house, and I didn't buy a home until 2.5 years ago. And I have to say thank you to the handy woman who helps me and all of the YouTube channels that exist that did not exist 30 years ago. That's the stuff that I need.
Honestly, it can be your best friend. It can be your worst enemy. You got to be careful.
Gotta be
Like,
careful.
okay, know your limitations.
So you got okay. So this tells me a little bit about how you got into it. You understood the investment angle. You had some experience kind of flipping a home that you were living in. You thought, let's do this more. You go, you spend a year, you become a real estate agent. You decide you love it to do as for yourself, which becomes a career.
Yeah.
And then personally, some things happen. You're no longer in that relationship. You still have two not as young, but still young kids, I'm guessing. And how do you like, is the real estate game enough to keep you afloat as a single parent? Were you able to manage that? Or like, where did you have to go next?
It would have been, except now we're heading into the Great Recession of 2008.
Timing.
And yeah, so that was a very hard time to be in real estate, no matter what else you had going on. So then you pile on the fact that I'm a single mom and all sorts. I mean, it got ugly. It got very ugly. And so that's how I ended up, in the introduction, when you talk about me getting down to my last $4. So what happened, everything comes crashing down around my personal world. And at the time, I owned my own home. I'm working in real estate. And also, through a part of the story I skip over is my experience in marketing and advertising, which I kind of fell into before I had kids, learned a lot about marketing. So I fell back on that. So here I am in the Great Recession, and I'm like, okay, I'm selling real estate, but I'm falling back on my marketing expertise. Real genius, because people cut out the marketing dollar when they can't pay the bills. Let me tell you, that's the first thing to go. But hey, this is my skill set. And so when all of this happened in June of 2008, I had a couple of luxury properties in escrow, and the stock market crashed. And when that happened, it was, I mean, I can remember it so clearly, waking up as a Tuesday morning, waking up, finding out that people's financial world was falling out around themselves. Both of the buyers that I was representing at the time had to get out of their transactions. And I was really counting on those transactions to kind of level me through. Times had already been tough. I felt blessed to have those two transactions, and then that happened. So I ended up, I can still remember making the hard decisions when times got really hard, when I said, okay, do I stop making the mortgage payment, or do I pay the mortgage, but now I can't feed my kids? So I kept the lights on and food on the table, is, how that worked out. And eventually it went into foreclosure. So I short sold my house and I moved in with my parents. And I really did think, again, with the work ethic and the, all the things, I thought, oh, it'll just be for a couple months. It ended up being 2.5 years before I was on my feet enough to be able to move back out with my kids. And it was during that time that I found myself down to my last $4. So, like I said, I'm still doing real estate, but I'm leaning more on my marketing right now, because I had to take a step back from real estate because it was just so volatile. And so I had started helping some small businesses with their marketing. But again, I had some invoices out there that were just slow to pay. So it wasn't that I was, sitting around on the couch eating bonbons. I just, you're waking up every day, you're doing the work, and the money's not coming in. And I can still remember waking up that morning and I pull up my bank account and it's now officially overdrawn. And I've got another bank account that's at zero, flat zero. And I look in my purse and I have $4 bills to my name. And it was terrifying. And this also happened 1 week prior to my kids having to start a new school. Because remember, I move in with my parents. We had to move schools. My kids were going to a private school where they wore uniforms. Now they're going to be going to public school. And I had to get them, school clothes. I had no money to do any of that. And so, that was the low point for sure.
Yeah, that's very humbling after you have been a go-getter, great work ethic, willing to put the, effort in to get those results, but you had to short sell your home, those 2 luxury properties fall through, all these external circumstances. Lucky that you had family to even fall back on, that was an option. But a lot of people were, in fact, I've met a lot of people through the show who started in entrepreneurship in 2008, 2009 because they got laid off. So a lot of people are, scrambling to find a new foothold. How did you start to sort of dig your way out of this experience to get back on, on top? And why continue with real estate after the experience of it being so volatile? Like, how did that become, because we introduced you as being like, the queen of all things real estate, right? Like, this is like your life. So like, but that doesn't like equate with like,
Like,
and then
hold
it turned
on.
to be bad again. It's like we were like, it's like a bad relationship again. And then this bad thing happened, other bad thing happened.
I'm glutton for punishment.
Yeah. So how do you decide that it's still a passion of yours? And what do you do when it's still not working?
That is a great question. So here's a couple of things, and this is what part of why I even share this part of my life and why I'm sharing this story uh, is because I know that we are in hard economic times again, and totally different than what it was in 2008. So I'm not trying to equate the two, but I see a lot of people suffering, especially young people. I know it's a harder game today than it was even when I was in my early 20s. And I just want to kind of send out that encouragement that there's a few things that you can do. And the number one thing is you have to, it's like what Mr. Rogers always said, look for the helpers. And I am a big believer in that. And so that's how I started to get out. First, I've already named my parents. They were helpers. They were, again, my dad was blue collar. They were not wealthy people, but it was, okay, I don't necessarily have the money to help you where you're at, but I have the space for you to come home and live here. And they were wonderful about it. Although, I joke with them and they always say, no, this isn't true. But I joke around and go, yeah, but if you knew it was going to be for 2.5 years, would you have said, come live with us? Like, I don't know. I don't know if you would have. They swear they would have, but but at any rate, so I was blessed to have that option. And from there, it was other people who came alongside me and were able to help me get out of the situation, whether it was by a physical need or a mental need. Because in this period of time, I had a dear friend of mine who saw Les Brown speak. Are you familiar with Les Brown?
I am.
The goat of motivational speaking. And she saw him at an event and she bought his 6 CD set called Choosing Your Future. And she lent it to me. And she said, here, I really feel like you need to hear this message. And so I had the 6 CDs. I put them in my 6 CD changer in my car. And that was all I listened to. And it started to shift my mindset. It really started to change it hit something deep down inside. And maybe that messaging is what connected to that little girl who watched Amy and said, I want to be that. And I had this little seed of greatness. Because if you ever hear Les Brown speak, his message is that you have greatness in you. And the world needs whatever it is that you have to give. And so that message just really on loop really resonated with me. And so I had, people who were helping me with my physical needs, but that gift was almost the greatest one that I received because it shifted everything in my mindset. So when I really looked back at who I was in my real estate career, I realized that as a real estate agent, I was kind of a paycheck player. And I am a relational person. It's how I'm very much into those relationships. However, I can tell you that every time I started helping someone with their real estate, to me, it was like, how can we got to, again, put those puzzle pieces together and get you into the house you want or get your house sold, whatever the case may be. And when I looked back on that and getting my mindset shifted, I realized I was not coming from the right place in my career. And so I never fell out of love with real estate. But when I shifted my mindset and I approached it differently, that's when things started to shift. I started to realize that as a real estate professional, I can help other people through what is a very difficult and stressful transaction in their life. I can help take on the stress. I can help them get from point A to point B, whether it's that they're buying their first home and they want to step into the American dream and have their own place to live, and I can help them navigate that and learn. Or if it's that they're empty nesters and they need to downsize now, and now they're opening up other possibilities, or even working with investors who this is what they're doing to try and provide for their future and put their kids through college. There's so many ways that what I do for a living can help other people. And now that's how I show up. Like, to me, that's the juice. That's the excitement now. It's not let's put the puzzle pieces together. That's still fun. But the juice is, look at who I got to help today. So I want to encourage other people too. Like, you're going through this, just know, like, it's mindset. It's mindset shifting and understanding how you show up, connecting with your true purpose. Like, what are you here for? We're not here to earn a paycheck. That's not the purpose of our lives. We need paychecks. We need them. Okay. Money is important, but that's not the why. That's not the purpose. So that's how I reconnected with real estate, I guess.
I appreciate you drawing the map for us because, there's an outside view that's like, whoa, this doesn't really make sense. But it starts to you as you share that. And I also really appreciate Les Brown being brought into this conversation because people like him. I'm a member of the National Speakers Association. He's one of the early members of it's like a 50-year-old institution. So he was one of those people that were there in the beginning. A lot of greats were. And I also just learned that he is credited with the quote, "Shoot for the moon, and if you miss, you will still be among the stars." I always wondered who originally said that. So there you go, Les Brown.
Les Brown. Well, so I'll tell you, and I know we're going to continue to kind of move forward, but I want to tell you, like, you just heard that low point and how his words reached in and helped me. So fast forward to 2021, and I actually had the opportunity to personally mentor with Les Brown.
Wow.
And you know how they tell you should never meet your heroes? So when this opportunity came up, I went, I don't know. I don't know if this is right. But I stepped into it wholeheartedly. And I will tell you, it's one of the coolest experiences of my life. I had the opportunity to share a stage with him. I had the opportunity to write a book with him. It was phenomenal. And I actually share my $4 story in the book that I co-authored with Les Brown. And so I look at that and go, man, if somebody would have told me in that time when I'm listening to his words on loop and it's lifting me up out of where I was at, that I would have the opportunity to have this type of a relationship with him and an influence in my life, I never would have believed it. but it's honestly part of why I share my story today,
That's
because if
amazing.
Les reached into my life and lifted me up from that time, and then having worked with him, I realized it was important that maybe there's somebody out there who will hear my story, and that those words can lift them up in a pivotal moment for them. And I think that when we have those stories, no matter who we are or what that story looks like, we have a responsibility to move forward and share that with other people to, try and pay it forward, if you will, and help people get out of where they're at if they're at a low point.
Well, as we said earlier, influence and responsibilities, how you're defining leadership. So,
Yeah.
not surprised that that was how you sort of took that in and decided that's what it meant for you in your life. That's a really powerful sort of end cap to that story, that you got the chance to spend time with him and that he didn't burst your bubble as a human being. I really like hearing that too. I've only
Oh,
heard good things, so I'm not
right?
surprised, but still, like you said, don't get too close, right?
No,
when
he was wonderful.
when you were shifting your business model, and it sounds, I think, you know, this is interesting because some of the examples, I taught networking. I don't know if you know this about me, but before the pandemic, I spent over a decade teaching people how to network in person at conferences, at events. I never said the word in person because that was what networking was, right? So you just by default.
Yeah.
Um, and there were lots of examples in my life back then of bad networking, and they were, I think, all except maybe one, from real estate agents. Um, the way they like work the room, spraying and praying their business cards, putting you on their list when you didn't ask to. You say you're not interested in buying a home. Oh, first time home buyer, I have this whole program. It's like, no, So this is like lots of really kind of poor etiquette. But I also have had the incredible pleasure of meeting a handful of real estate agents, including the one who sold me my home, who are amazing human beings and really, really get relationship building. I'm still friendly with my real estate agent 2.5 years later. Like, I love that. And there's someone in Boston that I actually had on the show because I just think she's so incredible. So, and I had my real estate agent on the show. So like, I love the idea that there are some really, really good examples, but as an industry, I don't know where they're learning this, but
Don't
you have
disagree.
people in your life that are teaching you best maybe ish practices for that. But then being an entrepreneur in a slightly different sense, like the way you started to approach this wasn't just about closing the sale.
Mhm.
You're approaching it a little bit differently, entrepreneurial in a different sense, which is maybe also the difference of these other people I'm admiring. How did you find the people to hold you up and give you some sense of what that could look like? How did you even reimagine that possibility? Like, where did that start to come together? Were there people in your life? Did you join certain communities or networks that helped sort of reflect back to you the way you wanted to be showing up and the work you were feeling called to do?
Yes. So right before things started to shift, so 2008 is when everything went haywire for me. It was kind of late 2007 that I started using a system called send out cards. I don't know if you've heard of it. Okay. So I start using send out cards because in that period of time, I'm writing handwritten thank you notes at the end of every day. It's taking me 45 minutes to get through 5 notes because I would write the note. And then, of course, like I'd misspell something and your pen slips and, and so you'd rip it up and throw it away. So then you get all of them. And then you finally like, okay, now I got to find the addresses and you write them all out. And then you've got a stack of cards and you're like, where are my stamps? I got to go to the post office tomorrow and get stamps. And then you forget. And then they sit. Anyway, it was a whole thing. So somebody in a network, I was in a networking group called BNI. And so at the time, somebody in my BNI group was a send out cards person. And I went, yeah, I need what you got. I need, come on, let's go. Like, you're telling me I can get my handwriting into a card that I create online. I click send and somebody else does all the rest of that for me. Count me in. So I sign up for this truly from a just tactical, this is going to save me time kind of thing. And When I started using it, I went, oh man, everybody needs this. Again, marketing hat on. So I
Mhm.
did sign up. It's a network marketing company. And so I signed up to also be an affiliate for the company and be able to, sell packages and what have you. And as part of that, they do little seminars. And so it was the first seminar. They used to call them the Treat 'em Right seminars. They call them something different now, but it was called a Treat 'em Right seminar. And I show up, and the founder of Send Out Cards, Cody Bateman, and then some of the other top people get up and start talking about the importance of gratitude, the importance of giving to give, not giving to get, the importance of recognizing and celebrating other people. And when you do that, how it, people remember you. And it's the Maya Angelou quote that people will forget what you did, they'll forget what you said, but they'll never forget how they make you feel. And this is what started to resonate with me. And I started having so much fun sending these cards to people for with no expectation. So it really was this education that I got through just joining, hey, I just wanted an easy way to send thank you cards.
Right.
And
Yeah.
now all of a sudden this whole paradigm shift around this happened, and that was truly what shifted my mindset about how I approach networking and relationships, professional relationships specifically.
I do know a few people who are really big advocates of send out cards. And I'll make sure there's a link to learn more about that in here. And if you have an affiliate link you want me to put in, please share it. We'll put this in here. I think the show notes, people
Yeah.
like to dive in and learn more about it. Speaking of the show notes, before I forget, I wanted to give a shout out to the two people I was mentioning earlier. These are the two real estate agents that I thought were so incredible at networking that I wanted to have them on my show. And since we'll probably have some of your friends listening, I want them to check out these folks. Melanie Swayze, episode 165. She's my friend from Boston. I'm still in touch with because of how great she is. And Christopher Nelson, who sold me my home, helped me buy my home, I should say. Episode 345. And you were just talking about giving, not to get, but giving to give. And that made me think of Bob Berg, the author of The Go Giver. He's incredible, and I had him on the show, episode 158. So lots of great next steps for those who are listening. Cue all those up, and I think you'll resonate with a lot of what you're hearing Jacki talk about. I use a system called Postable because it's a similar story actually. I got sent a link for a Postable like address book. And I thought, well, that's a clever way to organize an address book of people I want to stay in touch with. I want to be the kind of person who sends cards. If I only could get their addresses organized, that would make it easier. So for like a year, I was collecting addresses and I bought a stack of cards and I bought the stamps and then I just didn't do it. I just didn't do it. A year later, I had this epiphany that they sell cards. And it's the kind of epiphany I had when one day my wife, I tell her I'm going to Dunkin' to get coffee. Does she want anything? And she says, bring me back a donut. And I'm like, oh, they sell donuts. I forgot. It's like, that's not what I use them for. So what are you talking about? Yeah. So it was that kind of moment. And I love it because it's got a handwriting font and I don't have to stress about it. I can rewrite my message 16 times. And because of this, I'm actually a person who sends cards, not just for birthdays, but also, if I see something happening online, whether it's a celebration or something hardship that they're going through,
Yep.
I get to acknowledge that. And I'm sometimes the only person who sends a card in those occasions. And I've gotten some really lovely responses because I'm the one who it's just seamless now. So I think that whatever system you use, the idea of making that less friction to be
Yep.
the person who sends the card, or hyper personalize in your own way, whatever makes sense to you. But I do love that sort of more personalized touch that we're doing, that you're
Yeah.
reaching out to people. And I love that they taught you more than just how to, sell cards, but they were teaching you like the sort of how to be in the world differently.
Yes.
And being around those kinds of people also has a real influence. There's that other, the Jim Rohn, the Jim Rowan.
Jim Rohn.
Yeah, you are the some of the 5 people you spend the most time around. I'm messing up the quote, but yeah.
That's okay. We got you. You're right there. You're right there.
I'm so close. I'm so close. Another great we can mention. So I love that we brought that in. I actually am wondering about how you network beyond the send out cards. There's the people you see once a year at a conference. There's people you have spent time with, maybe 5 years ago, you were working together really closely, but not really as much since. You both really enjoy each other's company. That's kind of the given in this scenario. They're sort of not your inner circle. They're the second or third layers out. How do you nurture and sustain those kind of weaker connections? Any habits, philosophies, or practices?
Yes. So first and foremost, exactly all the things you just said. So we don't need to reiterate, but I love to celebrate people when I see moments on social media, or, if they lost a loved one or a pet or whatever the situation, to send them something with a picture of that person or pet that they lost, and, inside of a sympathy card, things like that, where, on social media, we're not really connecting with one another. We have the illusion that we're connecting with one another. So if you can kind of take what that information is that people are sharing publicly, and you can help to say, hey, I see you, in a way that's beyond a comment or a thumbs up. So I do that either through sending them a card, or just a private message through whatever social media platform I see that come in on, because so many people will, give you the little like or the little heart hug or whatever. And that's nice. I mean, I'm a big proponent of good, better, best. So it's good to at least acknowledge. You don't want to just let it go and go, well, because I can't call them right now or send them a card, I'm just going to scroll past. Like, no, at least acknowledge. However, that's one of the things, is staying connected with them and celebrating their life, or coming alongside of them when life is hard, and whatever that needs to look like. I also make sure that I'm calling people on a consistent basis, especially the people you're talking about, where they're not my besties. They're not the people I call every week anyway, just to say, hey, what's up? They're the people that every time you talk to them, you need to do a little bit of a catch up, and that's okay. But you talk to them frequently enough. If you have a good database system manager that helps remind you, like, hey, it's been 3 months since you last connected with this person, so reach out to them. And so that helps to move that relationship along. So it's definitely making the phone calls. It's definitely celebrating them in a personal way, to say, hey, I see you.
Do you have a particular CRM that you're using?
I use Follow Up Boss.
Interesting. Follow Up Boss. I haven't heard of this one. Very
I
cool.
think it's very focused on real estate. So it is something that I use specifically for my real estate business. I use an impossible one called Infusionsoft. No, it's called Keep now.
Confusionsoft.
Confusionsoft. I use that for my coaching business, and I know just enough to be dangerous. So if you sign up for any of my little coaching things, don't worry. I'm not the one who sends you an email every week, because I can't figure out how to get there. But you will get what I promised I would deliver. You'll get that.
So we're wrapping up things. We're about to get to my favorite wrap-up question. Before we do, let's hear a quick word from our sponsor. All right. So I hope we stay in touch. You're a lot of fun.
Same, Robbie.
And it's a year from now, and we realized that it's been about a year since we did this interview. I'm curious, when I say to you a year from now, hey, what should we celebrate? Well, how great was this past year? What are we going to be toasting? What are you most looking forward to in the year ahead?
Oh, that is a really good wrap-up question. So I will tell you that the thing I'm most looking forward to in the year ahead is that right now I've got so many things with real estate going on, and that's great. I love real estate. As we've already discussed, never given up on it. But I have been coaching our new agents through my brokerage, and recently have launched a coaching program for more seasoned agents, and specifically within our brokerage nationwide, but also with the intent to reach out to agents no matter where, no matter who you're hanging your license with, I have a heart and a passion for real estate agents because I've been there. I've been broke. I've also been on the cycle where when I came back over the hump and had success, I was working myself into the ground. I wound up in the hospital, bedridden for 10 days, and it was because I was working too much. So I went from one extreme to the other. So I learned how to create a healthy work-life balance. I learned how to put boundaries around my time and my personal relationships so that I show up for my professional relationships even better. And once I learned that, I actually watched my income skyrocket and my production skyrocket, which sounds so counterintuitive to most real estate agents. So I saw what systems I had put in place to make that happen. So my passion is to share that with other agents. So a year from now, I hope that I'm celebrating that I have helped at least 100 other agents, no matter from where else, learn how to create that consistent income with a healthy work-life balance.
I cannot wait to see that happen. Would love to support you making it happen. This has been a really great conversation. How can people find you and follow your work?
The best way to get in touch with me is if you go to stepstostrength.com. You're going to find it. It's my link tree. You're going to just find all the good stuff. You'll get connected with my social media. Please reach out to me. I love to get DMs on Instagram from anyone who's heard this. Please let me know, what did you get out of it? What's the number one thing? Like, oh, that's my juice. I love it. So definitely reach out to me. I would love that. But you get all the other stuff. You can find the book I wrote with Les. You can find my, programs and systems and things that I offer, and even my affiliate link for send out cards. So
Well, I will be digging around stepstostrength.com. We're also going to put that link and all your other links for your LinkedIn, YouTube. We'll get your book link there, and all the different resources that we mentioned and people that we mentioned today. We'll make sure to put links to them as well, and that'll all be available at ontheschmooze.com. Thank you so much for joining us for this conversation.
Robbie, thank you so much for having me. It's been a real pleasure.